For answers, we turn to key advisors from both camps. The Bush campaign's political director, Mary Matalin. From the Clinton camp, media advisor, Mandy Grunwald. And to add perspective, Republican pollster, DiVall, and Democratic pollster, Greenberg. Drawing the line for tonight's debate and issues facing the nation.
Face the Nation with Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
And welcome again to the broadcast. By chance, the Democrats who are on the broadcast today are in St. Louis, where tonight the debates take place. The Republicans this morning happen to be in Washington. Mary Matalin, I know you're leaving after the broadcast to go to St. Louis. I'd like to start out with a question to the pollsters. Obviously, what we saw in the introduction of the program, the president making this charge about Bill Clinton's anti-war activities when he was a student, were topic one this week. I'd like to ask both of you, and let me start with you, Linda. What impact has this had? Are you doing any tracking that suggests it's helped or hurt President Bush, or helped or hurt Bill Clinton?
Well, it's really too soon to say just yet. From the 4th through the 7th of October, which I guess would be through Wednesday night, we saw that the margin moved a little bit further to the advantage of Bill Clinton. What had been an 8-point advantage has become anywhere from a 12 to 14-point advantage. But there are other things that occurred during the course of the week. Perot's advertising campaign, the advertising campaign of the other two generally, and then this last-minute attack. I will have to say, though, having just returned from the South, from Jacksonville, Florida, that there are sections of the country where there are a lot of concerns about some of the charges, not so much what Bill Clinton did in Russia 23 years ago, but more importantly with a lot of veterans. Just the fact that he can't seem to remember, exactly what he did. It's the honesty issue once again. But more important, it's the sense that a lot of these people did fight for the country, and they do find it a little bit uncomfortable with the notion that somebody would be organizing marches and protests abroad. That is a signal that is being registered with a certain segment of the population.
Stan Greenberg, you polled for Bill Clinton. What have you found out this week?
Well, the segment Linda talks about is very, very small indeed. We showed the lead grow during the week. There was very clear evidence that this was backfiring. It's both the fact that the president wasn't speaking about the economy and was seeming to personalize this race. We've seen shifts toward Bill Clinton across the country and with baby boomers. We think this was another Republican convention, very narrowly cast, and not the kind of campaign that someone running for the President of the United States needs to be presenting at this late date.
Mary Matalin, you're the political director for the president. What was the president driving at?
Well, the president was getting to what has been a persistent bad issue for the governor, and that is his repeated pattern of prevarication, and not just in this race, but throughout all of his races. When this issue was raised in his 1982 gubernatorial race, he said the same thing he's saying today. First he denied it, and then he said this candidate is desperate. So, and he showed the same pattern of fabrication and equivocation in the story about the draft, and only when evidence of letters, his own written letters, came out, did he fess up? Did he come clean? And that's why he himself invites this level of skepticism. Linda is right. The pollsters are right. People don't care about what happened in his life 23 years ago. Indeed, they might be proud of some of the things he did. A lot of people resisted the draft and participated and led anti-war demonstrations. But the fact that when faced with issues that he knows are going to be somewhat unfavorably perceived by voters, he equivocates, he fabricates, and then when the candidates, his opponents, bring this point up, he says they're desperate. He says it's sad. I'd like to keep count today of how many times Mandy and Stan are going to say, isn't this sad? You know what's sad to them is that these issues in the final days when they're trying to run out the clock are finally coming to the forefront.
Well, I'm certainly, I want to hear what Mandy Grunwald has to say too, but it seemed to me that the president was suggesting in some way that Bill Clinton was unpatriotic because he took a vacation trip to Moscow.
Said those words. The president feels very viscerally. His life was shaped by other events. When he was 18 years old, he was shot out of the sky in enemy territory. He has a different visceral feeling about this. And he was answering a question. He has a very, for President Bush,
correct me if I'm wrong, but did he not say for someone to go to Moscow at that particular time?
He is saying, come clean, Governor Clinton. And I will say again, Governor Clinton invites this level of skepticism because of his repeated pattern of deception and prevarication, not 23 years ago, in every single one of his races. His entire adult life, all he's done is run for office, for attorney general, for lieutenant governor, for governor 5 times, and in every single race up until this year when evidence was provided by eyewitnesses at the time, he lied about this. He lied that he was inducted. He lied that he got a deferment. He lied about participating in anti-war demonstrations, saying that he never knew what his opponents were talking about, and then he later confessed that he had attended few marches to listen to the speeches, when at the time, when his memory was fresh, he wrote to Colonel Holmes, he spoke, he wrote, he marched, he organized. And Father McSorley, who was a friend of his, a Jesuit priest, a well-respected peace activist from the time, said he was very excited. He was one of the main organizers of these things. Fine. Call me Catholic. I tend to believe Father McSorley on this issue. And I don't know why Bill Clinton just doesn't come clean in the first instance. And that's what is happening here in these polls. There's a cumulative effect because he always prevaricates on these issues. And what people are saying to themselves is, if we can't believe the simplest things that he tells us about his past, how can we trust anything he's telling us about the future? This man has a big problem going into these debates and a big problem going into this election.
All right, Mandy Grunwald, the floor is yours.
Bob, I think that Mary and the president and his campaign are just out of touch with how American people feel. They do not care what happened in 1969. They care very, very much what's happening to their lives now. And the more this president drags the election into the gutter, into strange and bizarre charges about what Bill Clinton did, he was a student 23 years ago, the more people say he just doesn't understand anymore what's happened to our lives. We have 10 million people unemployed in this country. This president has had the worst economic record in 50 years. And every time he starts talking about Moscow and student trips, it is more reinforcement for people that he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. It's nothing personal. It really isn't. I think people have a great deal of respect for the president. I think they're at the point where they're ready to hand him his gold watch, thank him for his service, and send him home. They're ready for a change in this country, and I think Mary and her president just don't understand how hungry people are to move this country forward and how little they want this kind of attack and smear politics.
Mandy, I am out with the president every single day. I listen to every one of his speeches. If we had time, I could recite one of those speeches for you. He's been talking about his agenda for American renewal, his economic plan. He's been talking about legal reform, health care reform.
I listen to the
Mandy,
speeches, too.
excuse me for speaking while you're interrupting, as my favorite Democrat likes to say. You had your turn, I'll have my turn. That's how it works on these talking head shows. He's been talking about all these things out there. He's been connecting with the American people, but every time he says one thing about Governor Clinton, who, by the way, for 11 months has done nothing except trash President Bush, his entire campaign is predicated on making people feel bad. He never tells you what is really going on in the economy. We have inflation rates at 20-year lows. We have interest rates at all-time lows. We are the world's #1 exporter. We are the world's #1 in worker productivity. We are the world's #1 in worker compensation. There are all sorts of signs of economic recovery. We've had 5 consecutive quarters of growth, and we've had 3 consecutive months of declining unemployment. And unlike the last time Democrats were in charge of the White House and the Congress, there isn't that hideous inflation that was raping people's savings. So let's not talk about the worst economic record. That dubious honor belongs to Jimmy Carter and the last time the Democrats controlled the White House and the Congress.
Ms. Grunwald, we will come back to you. You'll get the first go. But speaking of economics, we have to have a commercial here.
This portion of Face the Nation is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, supermarket to the world.
Look what ADM research has cooked up. An all-vegetable patty that contains dietary fiber, is low in fat, and free of cholesterol. One that's made to meet the demands of vegetarians and other health-conscious consumers. It's the Midland Harvest brand Harvest Burger. And so far, it's made a big impression everywhere it's landed. ADM, supermarket to the world.
presidential election in the 20th century has had enormous implications for America and the world. Through it all, Merrill Lynch has understood those implications, and we continue to use that understanding to help you shape your future as we move forward together.
And we're back with some of the people who are playing a key role in advising the candidates who will be debating tonight. And Mary Matalin has leveled some very serious charges against Bill Clinton. I think we should let Ms. Grunwald respond to that.
Well, let me start with her description of the economy, which she says is getting better and is in good shape, and people just don't understand that. If the choice for the American people is a president who does not understand that the economy is hurting people, that incomes are falling, that unemployment is high, and Bill Clinton, who is ready to move this country forward, change the fundamental structure of our economy, and get people back to work, I think this election is quite clear for people. Let me just deal with the issue of trust, too. Ms. Matalin has leveled some very serious charges and used the word lying a lot of times, and I don't appreciate that. The newspapers for the last couple of days are filled with stories that I find very serious and quite outrageous about the conduct of this government in reference to Iraq, in reference to Iran. We now know this president cut a deal to remain silent and not have to answer questions about the Iran-Contra scandal till after the election. I think there are serious questions he has to answer about the conduct of this government on Iran-Contra, his own personal conduct, and his conduct on the Iraq story. The idea that our government was involved in arming Saddam Hussein is a far more serious charge than anything we've heard in this election, and I expect the president will have to answer some serious questions about that tonight, whether it's the CIA or the Justice Department, who are now knifing each other in the back, who are responsible for that. The ultimate responsibility lies with this president, and I think these are serious charges that he should come clean on, frankly.
He should come clean. Mandy, get a grip. Governor Clinton said in April he would produce documentation to verify what was then supposed to be his definitive statement on his draft record. We have asked repeatedly for those records. George Bush has answered every question. You know what matters to the American people? Character matters to them. Trust matters to the American people. The part of the job of the President of the United States is to be somebody that their children can look up to, is a person that sits in that Oval Office making judgments.
All right, well, let's ask the pollsters and bring them into this. What are people looking for tonight, Linda DiVall? Not hunches, but what do your numbers tell you that people want to know about? Are they worried about Iran-Contra and whether or not the president knew or didn't know, whether or not he was in the loop? Are they worried about where Bill Clinton went on vacation when he was a college student?
No, I think clearly the voters are worried about two things. First and foremost is the economy. Secondly is the future direction of this country and where these two leaders are going to take the country. And third, Mary is exactly right. The character is critically important in presidential elections. What voters are looking for in George Bush tonight is for the president to reassert himself, to show a steadfast demeanor, to talk about where he's going to take this country, and to remind people. We're talking as if the President of the United States is the only one to make fundamental decisions guiding the economy here. The Democratic Congress has disappeared from this argument. So there is a point to be made on that front. And with Bill Clinton, the task is a little bit different. He has to demonstrate to people that he has the maturity and the world experience to lead this country at a fundamental time when voters are very concerned about the critical problems that we face today.
And your perspective, Mr. Greenberg?
Well, I've been very reluctant to get into this discussion because it's just a symptom of what kind of problems the president has as he, on the eve of this debate. We have been experiencing a 3-year-long stagnation, economic stagnation. People have been crying out for change on the economy, and on the eve of this debate, we have a dialogue that centers on 23-year-old student Tripp, and we have a denial from the spokesman from the president that the country is facing serious economic problems. One thing I'm impressed with is the dead seriousness with which voters are determined to vote for change and to vote for get this economy moving. That's what this debate is essentially about it, but there's a reason why Bill Clinton is 10 to 15 points ahead in the polls. He's been addressing the economy. They have seen his record on this question. They've seen his record of job creation, keeping taxes low in Arkansas. They've been turning to him in increasing numbers. I honestly don't know who it is that these folks are talking to on the campaign trail, but they clearly need to get out of their deep base corners of states that were traditionally in the Republican South and go out and speak to mainstream middle-class Americans who have moved to Bill Clinton. The president has a very heavy burden tonight. He's got to deal with the fact that most voters have no idea what he has to do on the economy, what his plans are on the economy, how he defends this record. There are so many issues facing the president that he has to address tonight. That's a very heavy burden. Bill Clinton needs to, I think, speak to the issues that he has spoken to right through this election.
All right.
This is how
I'm going to exercise some leadership here and say it's time for another commercial, because we want to have plenty of time to talk about a lot of things, including Ross Perot, when we come back.
Every presidential election in the 20th century has had enormous implications for America and the world. Through it all, Merrill Lynch has understood those implications, and we continue to use that understanding to help you shape your future as we move forward together.
If you took out everything we make for a loaf of bread, it wouldn't be a loaf of bread. If you took out everything we make for a jar of peanut butter, it wouldn't be a jar of peanut butter. The fact is, a lot of foods and beverages just wouldn't be the same without the ingredients we make at the Archer Daniels Midland Company. Flours, sweeteners, vegetable oils, soy proteins, as well as livestock and poultry feeds, which provide for meat, eggs, and dairy products. At ADM, we produce hundreds of popular food ingredients from America's most abundant crops, and we produce them efficiently, so that food doesn't end up taking too big a bite out of your budget. You won't find the name ADM on your grocer's shelves, but from now on, you'll know we're there. ADM, supermarket to the world.
It may surprise you to learn who, over 30 years ago, was the first car maker to build cars with seat belts, to make safety glass standard, the first U.S. car maker to offer anti-lock brakes, and who today offers more models with dual airbags than any other manufacturer. That company is Ford Motor Company.
We're committed to making safety innovation an important part of quality.
Ford Motor Company. Quality is job one. It's working.
You thought slam dunks by this guy would be a part of basketball's past, but Magic is back in training in Hawaii. We'll talk to Magic Johnson tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
Let's talk about Ross Perot. How does your man handle Ross Perot tonight, Mary Matalin?
Well, our candidate, our president, as Stan said, is going to do a lot of things tonight. We have more confidence in him, obviously, than Stan does. But this does afford us an opportunity to speak unfiltered to the American voters about his economic plan, about his health care plan, his education plan, everything that he's been talking about out there on the stump, which seems not to get through the media filters. So that is our main objective tonight, to put this election in context and talk about where George Bush wants to lead the future. But what about Perot? Perot has been a very significant and positive participant in this debate and in this whole election cycle.
Well, you sound like you're trying to get him to endorse the president.
No, I'm not trying to get him to endorse, he to endorse us. We have been working all summer long with his people. Many of them have come to us. They are very involved in the process. They care very much about America. They care specifically about deficit reduction. And what Ross Perot does by participating in this debate is keep the focus on the three economic plans. And ours focuses on reducing taxes, reducing spending, getting the deficit under control, and Mr. Clinton's focuses on raising taxes and raising spending, and we like that contrast, and we're going to talk about how ours is different and why it is better. And Ross Perot's main reason for getting into this race is to keep that focus on that issue, and that's why he'll be a very positive participant in tonight's debate.
Some people say the reason he got in is because he just doesn't like George Bush. I tell you don't agree with that.
Well, I don't want to talk about whatever has been their personal past. George Bush has said that he likes Ross Perot, and Ross Perot has said that publicly that he thinks George Bush is a fine man, so I presume he has higher motives than that.
Ms. Grunwald, what do you think Perot's impact is tonight, and how does your man handle him?
Boy, you never know what Ross Perot's impact is going to be, except that he shares Bill Clinton's concern about the economy. They have both been single-minded in this race in focusing people's attention on the economy, and they share, by the way, their same analysis of what's happening to the country. Instead of what Mary said earlier and what the president seems to believe, that everything is basically fine in this country if you and the press would just stop reporting all this bad news, I think both Ross Perot and Bill Clinton share an understanding that people are hurting out there and that fundamental change is needed in our government and in the way the economy is run for this country. So they share that basic analysis of what's wrong. I think Bill Clinton will be focusing on very different solutions that focus on how to change investment in people, focusing on education and job training, and really getting the country moving.
Can I just break through Mandy's method acting here? I did not say that everything was fine. The president has said, Mandy, that we're in a global economic transition. And things are trying to improve. We are trying to improve things. We have to work with the recalcitrant Congress here. I did not say things were fine. I said we were showing signs of recovery. This is what the Clintonistas do. They put words in your mouth, and they're all under message control, and they've all gone to the same method acting school, so they're all going to say sad and desperate, and they keep repeating the same things as if saying makes it so. Mandy, saying doesn't make it so. I did not say that everything was fine. George Bush has not said that everything is fine. George Bush has been working on this problem with a very difficult Congress. And let's not forget, as all Americans know, apparently you all have forgotten, that the Congress appropriates. And how much worse would it have been had the president not had that veto pen, and how much better could it have been if he had the line item veto? As every American knows, as every kid in school knows, the Congress appropriates. The president only has the veto pen, which he's been wielding with a vengeance.
Very testy.
That's because, Mandy, you're sounding very rude.
Let me just call time out here.
And keep interrupting me. If you let me finish a sentence,
let me interrupt both of you. I think we do need to give Ms. Grunwald just a chance here. Okay.
Mary, we're in the show me state. This is Missouri, and I think the people in Missouri will tell you that George Bush hasn't shown them anything.
Well, that's clever, Mandy.
Thank you, Mary. There's no reason to take that attitude. There are serious issues at stake here. This isn't a game between us or anyone else. There are real people out there who are hurting in large part because of the economic policies of this administration. They are in the grip of a failed idea. It's called trickle-down economics. And I hope that's what the debate focuses on tonight, because for 12 years we have been driven by this theory. If you give the money to the rich, they will invest in people. It does not work, and the people of this country are paying the price for that theory. Bill Clinton wants to change that, turn it around, and begin to invest in people. I would hope that we have an elevated debate about that tonight, that we discuss two very different views of how to get the economy moving. And all this bitterness and defensiveness from Ms. Matalin, I hope we don't see that from the president tonight. I think the American people deserve better. There are real issues and serious concerns, and I don't think this elevates the discussion. I would hope that he puts behind the kind of smear tactics he used this week, which don't do any good for the presidency and certainly don't help solve the problems that people are facing right now.
If Bill Clinton would talk about what is really going on, if Bill Clinton would come clean, if Bill Clinton would talk in something greater than platitudinous or mind-numbing statistics, we will have a real debate tonight. There are, you know, Bill Clinton has waffled and wobbled and weaseled. He even has waffled on his economic plan. First, he said he was only going to tax the top 2%, so people like my father in Maryville, Indiana would think that's Donald Trump and people that hang out in New York City. Which, of course, the IRS has come back and said the top 2% is wage earners of $64,000, which in some quarters is not exactly the rich. So now they're saying, no, that's not exactly what we meant. That was shorthand for $200,000 and above. Well, if you do your arithmetic, $200,000 and above wage earners taxed at 36% does not give them near the revenues that they have said they are going to produce in their economic plan.
Let's have just a quick question, kind of in closing, from the pollsters. What do you think, Linda DiVall, is the main weakness of George Bush at this point in the campaign? What do your numbers tell you is where is he most vulnerable? And I'm going to ask the same question to Stan Greenberg.
The major vulnerability that the president has at this time is people very much want to see him talk about the future direction of the country. He has talked about a lot of programs that Mary has mentioned quite specifically earlier. He has got to very forcefully say, I understand that there are some problems that this country faces. I have known that full well for a period of time. Here's what we're going to do to get this under control. And the beauty of Ross Perot is to make certain that some of these serious questions about the deficit and how we're going to take it down are addressed.
Okay. Mr. Greenberg?
Bill Clinton's problem is the fact that he's new and represents change, and therefore people want to be confident of that change. But I tell you, after I see what happened in this morning's discussion, where the president and his spokespeople have declined to take responsibility on the economy, blame Congress, blame Bill Clinton, blame the world economic recession, do everything but take responsibility, I think what we're going to find is that a Bill Clinton who leads, who's strong, who shows responsibility tonight, is going to win not just on economy and change, but on leadership.
All right. We have to stop there. No one can say it was not lively. We'll be back with a final word in just a minute.
Every presidential election in the 20th century has had enormous implications for America and the world. Through it all, Merrill Lynch has understood those implications, and we continue to use that understanding to help you shape your future as we move forward together.
Every second of every day, there are 3 new mouths in this world to feed. Hundreds of millions more by the year 2000. And the majority of them will be born in countries where malnutrition is already reaching alarming proportions. Right now, the world has the food and the resources to conquer hunger. But it won't happen as long as we continue to look the other way. ADM, Supermarket to the World.
Well, we had a big response to last week's debate on health care. Bill Thompson of Morganton, North Carolina, wrote in that it is not hard for him to understand why working people who are barely eking out a living don't have anything to spare for health insurance. He wrote, I have to work 65 hours a week at $5.90 an hour to make enough to pay the $180 a month for insurance. John Schulte of Wall, New Jersey, brought up another angle. He said, the biggest burden should fall on people who don't take care of themselves. He writes, there are 2 people. One earns $20,000 a year, eats spaghetti and potatoes, rice and beans and some fish, is a non-smoker and does not drink. The other person earns $25,000, eats beef every day, smokes, drinks. We should not be expecting the frugal person to subsidize the medical expenses of the wasteful. I would add only that all members of the Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association should write directly to Mr. Schulte and not to Face the Nation. That's it. See you next week.
This portion of Face the Nation was sponsored by Merrill Lynch, a tradition of trust, and by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, Supermarket to the World.
CBS News.
Rashes. Sinus problems, nosebleeds.
Everybody gets sick, but what if it's the building you work in that's the cause? The building? We'll explain tomorrow on the CBS Evening News. This is CBS.
Let Statements Interiors for Living help you make a contemporary statement. A statement of tradition. A bold statement. A statement of luxury. A timeless statement. A statement of elegance. Our professional designers can assist you with all of your decorating challenges. Create your own personal statement with Des Moines' newest home furnishing store. Statements Interiors for Living at 8800 Hickman Road.
Why will you pay less for your waterbed at Big Sur? Because you're buying directly from Big Sur's own factory. Just $289 buys the king-size Charleston, the Carmel, the Oak Accent, the Ridgewood Blue, the Concord, the Valencia, or the Timber Rose. 7 ways to save on a great night's sleep. Your choice, just $289. Factory direct means real value at Big Sur Waterbeds, 3715 Merle Hay Road at Douglas in Des Moines. This weekend, tour the Parade of Homes. 57 homes in 10 different communities. Brought to you by the Home Builders Association of Greater Des Moines. The show is free. Look for programs in the register.
Catch NFL football right here on TV8.
This is the Jim Walden Show with Iowa State head football coach Jim Walden and the voice of the Cyclones, Pete Taylor. The Jim Walden Show is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance, by Kid Fees, by Bankers Trust, by Pioneer Hybrid, and by Coca-Cola.
Hi, once again, everybody. Welcome to the Jim Walden Show. Kind of a laid-back week for Iowa State football as the Cyclones had an open date. Second year in a row this has happened. Jim, do you like this about 4 or 5 weeks into the season?
Well, I guess it's a matter of saying whether you do or don't. You have to find yourself liking it and make the best use of it. And I think we've done that. We had exceptionally good practices Monday through Thursday. We got caught up on some stuff. We've had a chance in your staff to go over some plays that you may have been practicing that you didn't need to practice, reasons why some plays aren't being used that you have been practicing, give some players time to get well. In this case, both Doug Scarthweet and Konopka probably will reap the benefits of this week. Hopefully both will be ready to go back Monday. Sherman Williams will benefit from this, but have an additional week. And it's just kind of a general review, evaluation, go over what you've been doing, look at your tendencies. So in some ways, it does give you a little bit of a break to do some evaluating. If you're hot and cooking, you probably, a lot of coaches will say, well, you know, it interrupted our rhythm and this, that, and other. So there's always pros and cons. Myself, I say, well, I've seemed to think, in this case, last year and this year, it's been more advantageous to us than the other way. So it was okay. I think our young men will enjoy it. They had the weekend off, and so everything will be fine.
When you say check your tendencies, do you mean you kind of self-scout yourself to see what's been going on?
Yeah, you put everything up, every formation, every play. You look, and all of a sudden you find out, how many times have you run to the right? How many times have you run to the left? And just in any play. In other words, we've been in this formation, we've been 70-30 right-handed. In this formation, we've been 80-20 pass. Tie all that up and say, because that's exactly what they're looking at. So it gives you an idea of what you're doing. Same thing on defense. You look and see how often are you in this 10. When do you blitz? We blitz.